I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Hispanic bishops in the U.S. speak up for the country's immigrants. I'll talk to one of those bishops, Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Octavio Cisneros.
Our people are suffering. Our people need that we confirm in the faith and in hope.
Plus, Brooklyn's Catholics gather to remember a police officer shot and killed in the line of duty.
We offer this rosary for the soul of Officer Peter and for an end to this useless and senseless violence.
And as American troops head home, Christians in Iraq pray for a safe holiday. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. You are not alone or forgotten. That is the message from Hispanic and Latino bishops here in the U.S. to immigrants in this country. In an open letter released this week on the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the bishops urged immigrants not to despair and thanked them for the Christian values they manifest with their lives. Now, the bishops say the immigrants' suffering faces show the true face of Jesus Christ. The letter comes on the heels, it just so happens, of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to hear arguments in the case of Arizona's controversial immigration law. Now, along those same lines, the letter also restated the bishop's support for comprehensive immigration reform, saying it should respect family unity and provide an orderly and reasonable process for unauthorized persons to attain citizenship. Well, one bishop who signed that letter is Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Octavio Cisneros. Bishop Cisneros joining me now here in the studio. Bishop, thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here with you, Matt.
We really appreciate it very much. First of all, give us a little background on this letter, how it came about and why the bishops decided to issue it now.
The letter came about in June, actually. The bishops were gathered for our semi-annual meeting, and we usually have a meeting that is social. We come together to identify ourselves, to restore our friendships as Hispanic bishops. And in the context of that meeting, we, of course, share some of our pastoral concerns. And one of the bishops actually said, you know, our people are suffering. Our people need that we confirm in the faith and in hope. And the church has been doing a lot. The church is the mouthpiece of the poor and the immigrants, and but they have not heard from the Hispanic bishops. The United States Catholic Conference has been issuing statements and declarations that support the plight of the immigrants, but the Hispanic bishops, our parishioners go to the parishes and they do get a lot of support from their pastors and their pastoral ministers. It's time that the bishop said something and that the people realize that we are with them and that we want to confirm in their hope.
Sure, and as you said there, you know, the bishops have been speaking out in favor of immigrants and their plight, and calling for comprehensive immigration reform for some time. This letter from Hispanic bishops in particular reiterates that. And says that, as I said at the beginning, that it should provide an orderly and reasonable process for unauthorized persons to attain citizenship. What would comprehensive immigration reform actually look like?
I cannot speak for all the bishops. I can only speak for what Bishop Cisneros sees. I think that as an immigrant myself, I realize that there are laws and we have to fulfill those laws and follow those laws. No country can just open their doors and say, everybody come in. And those laws have to be always moral laws, laws that are concerned with people and all of society, obviously. I think that comprehensive reform has to do with those who are already here in the United States, those who already are working and have a home and are contributing to society. It is necessary for our society, for the states to realize that they are human beings, that they have a relationship with others and with ourselves here. Sometimes we feel that They're just here to take away from all of us and leave. But they're contributing to our society. As I go around New York, I don't know any service that I receive that is not involving some immigrant from another country. And not just Hispanics, immigrants from every country. I think that we have to look at those who are already here and see how we can protect their rights too. Many of them are working and they're being used by the employers. They are not being paid the minimum wage, and that's the reform that has to happen.
Sure. One more thing here as time is quickly passing us by. I know that on the same day that this letter was released, the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Pope also made an announcement, a big announcement, that he is going to visit Mexico and also Cuba, which is historic. No Pope has been there since John Paul in 1998, I believe, was the last time that a Pope visited Cuba. But you kind of got a little bit of a preview, a little bit of a heads up from the man himself, I understand. I
did, and as I shook hands with the Holy Father and was greeting him, he looked at me right in the eye. He said, "I'm going to Cuba." My heart was pounding because we have heard rumors that he was going to Cuba, but this was Thanksgiving Day. The announcement was made on December the 12th, but I already had that announcement.
Couple of weeks heads up there. I like that.
It's,
it's good to be a bishop.
It's right. It is.
Well, Bishop Cisneros, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. Our time has come and gone, but thanks, and we'll have to have you back here in studio. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, well, there's more currents coming up. Prayers in Brooklyn for a New York City police officer killed in the line of duty. That story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, as Christmas approaches, Christians in one part of the world pray for safety. First, let's have a look at today's headlines. Funeral arrangements are complete for a New York City police officer shot and killed in the line of duty earlier this week. A funeral mass for Officer Peter Figorski will be held at the parish of St. Joseph in Babylon, Long Island. Figorski was shot in the face early Monday morning in Cypress Hills after he and fellow officers cornered a group of robbery suspects. The shooting happened not far from St. Rita's Church, and last night the Catholic youth group Jóvenes de Valor met at the church and held a prayer vigil at the site of the shooting.
Virgin most faithful,
Pray for us.
Mirror of justice.
Sunday night there was a call for a robbery in progress in a house, and the officer responded, and he was shot at point blank range in the face. This is where it happened. We offer this rosary for the soul of Officer Peter and for an end to this useless and senseless violence. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén. The call went out to the youth of Jóvenes de Valor and Jornadas de Vida Cristiana to come out today and support our local community.
This is like our home. Growing up here, I don't find it dangerous. A lot of people consider East New York a dangerous area, but this is a very close community. Everyone looks out for everybody, and I guess that's why this hit so hard.
I'm just here to show my respect for an officer. You know, it's Brooklyn, East New York. I'm just here to show some respect.
God says it is in heaven.
Yeah, they do what they gotta do. They show their love for, NYPD. And I guess it takes somebody's death to unite a lot of people.
Just Sunday, the gospel was about, being light in darkness. And I'm sure that Officer Peter was trying to do his part, to be light in the darkness. God has placed us here to be the light. So tonight, as we're here praying, I'm sure that God has heard our prayers.
I pray that with saying the rosary that people realize the violence that is going on and that it puts a stop to it.
5 men, including the one accused of shooting Officer Figorski, were arrested. They're being held without bail. Well, one of 2 Catholics vying for the Republican presidential nod is questioning the bishop's stance on immigration reform. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum says the bishops are wrong for calling for immigrants to be given an earned path to legalization. Speaking with the Des Moines Register, Santorum says if the U.S. does what the bishops suggest, it would create a huge magnet for other people to come to the country and break the law. He says it would also send a message that immigrants who are following current law are, quote, chumps. Santorum's comments came in an interview this week on Iowa Public Television. Well, meantime, Santorum was also one of 3 Republican candidates to sign a personhood pledge today. Santorum, along with Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann and former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, signed the pledge in which they affirmed their support for a human life amendment to the Constitution. The pledge was created by the pro-life group Personhood USA. It also affirms the candidates' support of legislation, stating that the 14th Amendment protections apply to unborn children. An update now from Turkey on the assassination of a Catholic bishop there last year. According to the website Asia News, a medical commission has ruled that the man accused of murdering Bishop Luigi Patavisi is mentally fit to stand trial. The suspect, who had worked as Patavisi's driver for 4 years, is accused of cutting the bishop's throat in June 2010. The next hearing in the trial is set for February. Back in this country, when it comes to the true meaning of Christmas, some residents in one New Jersey town do not want to hear about it. As we hear from reporter Robin Rieger, they don't want to hear about Christmas, period.
Some call this Knights of Columbus banner that says "Keep Christ in Christmas" a sign of the season.
I think it's absolutely wonderful to put that sign up. Christ is Christmas.
Not to some unnamed residents who live in Pittman and who believe the sign on Broadway violates the Constitution. They contacted the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Wisconsin that promotes separation of church and state. The group's consultant told us by phone they've asked the town to remove the sign.
It's a group endorsing religion over a public right-of-way. Now, whether it's county property or borough property or what, again, I don't know. And we've asked them to tell us that and have not yet heard back from them.
The town's mayor says the sign is attached to private property and hanging over a county road.
I think it's a sad state of affairs that our country, we kowtow to the minority and not the majority of people that would like to see things like that stay.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation says they will look for private property in Pittman now to hang their sign. It says,
"At this season of the winter solstice may reason prevail. There are no gods, no devils, no angels, no heaven or hell. There's only the natural world. Religion is but a myth and superstition that hardens the hearts and enslaves the minds."
They are entitled to their beliefs. They're part of this country too. Put it up, but don't you dare take mine down because you want yours up.
That report from Robin Rieger. Well, from the Vatican, the Pope got an early Christmas gift during his weekly general audience. Rome Reports has that story.
The Pope greeted a delegation from the Mexican state of Puebla, with the governor Rafael Morena Valle at the head of the group. He made special reference to his upcoming trip to Cuba and Mexico.
Agradezco su presencia y las muestras de la rica artesanía mexicana que han traído, espero con la ayuda de Dios poder ser yo esta vez quien visite su país.
The group of Mexicans brought the Pope a nativity and Christmas tree decorations that adorn the Paul VI audience hall. The Pope then took notice of the scene at the end of the audience.
And finally, dates for World Youth Day 2013 have been set. It'll take place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and it will happen from July 23rd to the 28th of 2013. The event scheduled a year earlier than normal because Brazil is hosting the World Cup in 2014. Stay with us. There's more currents ahead. When we return, it's a bigger problem than you might think, and I'll talk to someone who's trying to put an end to it.
It's beyond just the sin. It's a physical damage, and most people who consume it for a while subject themselves to addiction.
Welcome back. Well, it is a dangerous addiction, and according to research, children as young as 11 years old are exposed to it. It's something that affects not only the livelihood of the addict, but also of the family and friends. And with the advent of the internet, it's something that just about anyone can access with the click of a mouse and a quick web search. We're talking, of course, about pornography. And while it's arguably more prevalent now than it's ever been before, there are groups out there working to educate people about it, or as one group puts it, address the porn pandemic. That group, called Morality in Media, has a number of initiatives and resources aimed at bringing a stop to the addictions to and availability of pornography. I recently sat down to talk with Morality in Media's CEO, Pat Truman. Pat, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it very much.
Good to be here.
Well, we're talking today, of course, about the issue of pornography and how it is really an issue that has grown with the advent of the internet, especially. It's brought it, and smartphones and all of this other technology that we really can hold in the palm of our hand now, whereas it used to be something that, you know, someone might have to go out to a store and buy a magazine, and then there was, oh, they would have to be seen in public. But everything is sort of on this very, very personal level now with all of this technology. Is that one thing that you think is really to blame for it becoming such an issue in people's lives today?
Well, I think it is the easy availability of the material. As you point out, you don't have to go down to a porn shop anymore. Men would be mortified to go into one. Most men would. But to have it right on their office computer, on their home computer, on their cell phone, it's very easily accessible. And kids have easy access to it as well. There's such a small percentage of homes that have blocking software to prevent pornography from coming onto the home computer. That's where most kids get pornography, from mom and dad.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And one thing that was kind of astounding to me, you wrote for the Knights of Columbus magazine, and in this piece you actually began with an anecdote of talking to a priest who said that, you know, every other person who comes into confession has a problem with pornography. Every other man who comes into confession has a problem with pornography. But then you were talking to someone else, another priest, I believe, and they said, oh no, it's actually much worse than that.
Well, that's right. Priests are the front line on this issue of pornography because, unlike in any other religion, they are hearing confessions and they hear from the men themselves. Now, it isn't just men. About a third of the women are now involved with pornography, but they're hearing this, and any priest will tell you that it's virtually every confession by a man. And those are just the men who are going to confession. So it's very widespread in our church and then outside our church, of course.
Sure. And speaking of, you know, inside the church and all of that, of course, according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the use of pornography is listed as a grave offense. How do we, though, take that from being something that people can think about as, oh, well, the church teaches against this, so I shouldn't do it, and for that reason, of course, people who are you know, should strive not to do that, should strive not to use pornography. But how can we take it from that as sort of maybe a little bit more of an abstract concept to something that is really, you know, what are the practical reasons for people not to do this? Because, I mean, it can really be something that rips their personal life and their family life apart.
Well, of course, it's enough that it's a grave offense. I mean, we're offending God. Jesus said, if a man so much as just looks at a woman with lust, he's committed adultery. So it's very serious. But you have to understand, with pornography, profound changes in the brain take place from ingesting this material. It doesn't happen necessarily on the first look. So you don't mean to see pornography, but there it is. But you give your mind over to it and you look at it. What you'll find very quickly is that you'll need harder and more deviant material to maintain that sexual interest. And so that's how men go to harder and more deviant material. Some land on child pornography and they become child pornographers, whereas they never thought that that would be something they could be interested in. But because of the changes in the brain, they do become interested in that. But it also drives you away from your spouse if you're married. Many men will prefer pornography to relations with their spouse. That's after consuming a great deal of this material. And a steady diet of this material will just drive your spouse away from you and destroy the marriage. For a young person looking at this, we know from the science, and there's a great deal of science available. We've got a website, pornharms.com, that's assembled all this peer-reviewed research. And what we find is that for young people, children who are looking at this, and the average age is at 11 now,
wow.
When they are viewing pornography, their mind convinces them that they're actually experiencing what they're seeing. Now that's different than how an adult would see it.
Sure.
And it changes the brain as it's developing. That prefrontal cortex of the brain doesn't get developed till 23, 24, maybe to age 30 in some. That's the home of good judgment and etc. That is so important to carrying out the rest of your life.
Sure.
But it's dramatically changed with pornography. So it's
Absolutely.
beyond just the sin. It's a physical damage, and most people who consume it for a while subject themselves to addiction and will never get treated for it.
Sure.
And it'll affect they won't be able to have a satisfactory marriage, a satisfactory relation with a woman. It'll harm them in their jobs. It's profoundly affecting.
Absolutely. Well, very quickly here as we wrap up, you mentioned the one website. Mention that again for our viewers if they would like, and maybe another couple of resources that you guys have for them.
On pornharms.com, you'll find a wealth of material and resources that'll help people get help if they need help, if they're involved with pornography. That you can also get involved in our activities and others. Morality in Media has a great number of programs going right now, but if you go to pornharms.com, you can reach them all through that one website.
All right, Pat Truman, the president of Morality in Media, thank you so much for being here. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Matt.
it very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Stay with us. There's more Currents ahead. Coming up, Iraqi Christians brace for Christmas with prayers for safety. Well, finally tonight, there's a little more than 10 shopping days left until Christmas. And while most of us are searching for the perfect stocking stuffers, the families of troops serving in Iraq are getting a gift they've been waiting on for quite a while. Their loved ones are coming home. President Barack Obama welcomed troops back to the U.S. today at Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
So as your Commander-in-Chief, and on behalf of a grateful nation, I'm proud to finally say these two words, and I know your families agree. Welcome home. Welcome home.
But as America's armed forces leave Iraq behind, they also leave behind a Christian community that's been the target of extremist attacks. And as Christmas draws closer, the only gift Iraqi parishioners are hoping for is safety. CNN's Michael Holmes visited one Catholic church there.
Christmas approaches and Iraqi Christians pray for peace, goodwill, and that they'll make it till next Christmas alive. Outside, police and church security on high alert. Being a Christian in Iraq is enough to cost you your life.
It is a time actually for celebrations and for being very happy because Christ is coming actually to our life, to our churches, to our country. But we are afraid. We are afraid of attacks.
The war here has done the Christian community no favours at all. Saddam Hussein, of course, often brutally, kept the lid on extremists, and Christians here benefited from that. Those who would have wanted to do them harm could not. Well, that, of course, has now all changed.
I was kidnapped in 2006 from my church.
Father Saad Syrup Hanna was held by Muslim extremists for 28 days. Did you think you would die?
Yes. Yes, and sometimes actually. That's true.
Hundreds of other Christians have died. Throughout the war, dozens of churches have been bombed, priests and parishioners abducted, the homes of the faithful attacked. Last year in October, the worst attack so far. Gunmen stormed a Baghdad church, taking the congregation hostage and detonating bombs. More than 50 worshippers died. Back at St. Joseph's, Father Syrup Hanna says there'll be a Christmas tree inside this year, no decorations outside. He says that would be inviting trouble to a church that's already received its most recent threat just this month. Today, the faithful came regardless, defiantly celebrating their religion, while acknowledging it could come with a heavy price.
We don't go to church very much now, out of fear of terrorism and bombings. All our family left to America, Sweden, Canada. There's no one left.
Luma Ehsan's relatives aren't the only ones. Once, Iraq had nearly 1 million Christians. Since the war began in 2003, it's estimated half have fled, fearing for their lives.
Can you see a time when there won't be Christians in Iraq?
Right, actually. Yes, that's our fear.
Do you fear for yourself sometimes?
Yes, sometimes also. But it's okay. Some fear, it's okay.
That report from CNN's Michael Holmes. And that's it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, it's Catholic Education 2.0 as a local academy takes a new approach for a new generation. We head to Howard Beach to visit our latest School of the Week coming up tomorrow. But until then, be sure and visit us online at currentsny.net. You can also connect with us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.